Hi golfers, Rob Cheney here from GOLFTEC Singapore. In today's video we are going to discuss the perfect release to add power and club face control to your swing.
Swing. That was a good swing.
Before we get started today, I just want to say a big thank you for all the positive comments and feedback on last week's video regarding the trail arm and how that works in the downswing. Lots of good conversations. That video seemed to really help many of you out there, so I'm really pleased to hear that. If you haven't seen it already, do go and check it out. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and click that subscribe button right now. So today's video is going to discuss the release of the club, which that phrase has multiple meanings, I think, to different people. What I'm going to discuss today is how the club gets from this last parallel position and into impact, lining up and synchronizing the body, the arm, the forearm and wrist, and ultimately the club head, so we can achieve not only straight shots, but really unload the power that we've stored in the downswing into the ball. I think the release is another subject that doesn't get a huge amount of attention. I think it's also quite complex, like I mentioned last week's video regarding the trail arm and how that works. What I would say about the release is there's generally a couple of main common problems that I would see replicated. One would be for a golfer to very much stall their body, or because of poor body motion and body mechanics in the downswing, the arms and the club starting to come off the body a little bit sooner, the flipping that would be familiar to a lot of you, and the loss of power that causes. Not just the loss of power by adding dynamic loft, but also the compromising of the low point by scooping. You make the arc wider, you're going to hit the ground before the ball. So flipping is going to be addressed in this video today. And secondly, the other one I see quite often, especially for players practicing trying to keep more lag, trying to maintain more lag in the downswing, trying to create more power. They very often do so in such a way that they can overhold the lag. I certainly addressed this a little bit in my flying wedge video, that you don't want to just keep these wrist angles forever. And one of the biggest things that causes is for golfers to deliver, at least in practice when they're doing this exercise, a club face that's so open it's not functional. So whilst they might feel like they're doing all these great things with their wrists in the downswing to try and create and store more power, they're never really taught or shown how to get that power out and into the golf ball. So somewhere between those two evils of too much early release and flipping and too much shaft lean is the magic holy grail that we're all searching for, where we can synchronize the body, the arm and the club head into impact and line all this up really nicely. In order to do this drill, you're going to need an impact bag or something soft that you can strike. An old tire would also work quite well. But if you haven't got yourself one of these, do go and invest in one. This is a good exercise for you to do. One of the regular uses for impact bag is to simply hit it, trying to hold some shaft lean. And I see more mistakes with that drill than successes. It goes back to what I just said about the hands and the wrists really holding on for dear life, trying to smack this impact bag, trying to get that feeling of right wrist bend and some flying wedge. But in doing so, because there's no ball on the ground, as I've already said, they do it with a face that's so open that it would never work if the ball was there. So once you take the bag away and you put a golf ball in the way, the flipping returns. The drill I'm going to share with you today is going to not just help you to hit the bag and line up the wrists nicely, it's also going to help you to square that club face, which means this can then become functional once the ball is reintroduced. So to do this drill, you're going to require the impact bag, and we're going to start with one arm only. We're going to do left arm only to begin with. A couple of these checkpoints here are going to be for the shaft to be parallel to the ground, which will be P6, and from a down the line view, the shaft to be angled in, let's say 20 degrees or so. If you have the grid on the ground, you can see the hand path grid line there. You can use this as a good reference. And from P6, I'm going to use the roll of my forearm and the uncocking of my wrist to hit the bag as hard as I can. So I'm literally going to move from P6 to P7, but I'm going to do it with some power. As I do that, this requires a lot of strength in your forearm and wrist. You may find to begin with that it's very hard for you to even do one of these successfully, and that speaks to a lack of strength in your forearms and wrists at this time, and would also be one of the reasons why you might not hit the ball as far as you want to. This exercise is not just great for improving the geometry of your swing and improving the lining up and the squaring of the face. This is going to add strength and power to your stroke. So once again, left arm only. Set the club at P6 with the shaft in 20 degrees or so, and with the butt of the club here traveling a very short distance, almost zero distance, you are going to throw the club head down into the bag using the supination of the lead arm. Sorry, you're going to use this supination, which is the rolling or the turning of the forearm, and at the same time the uncocking of the wrist, the uncocking or the ulnar deviation that we've spoken about before. You're going to do that first of all just with the hand and arm really. You're just going to move the club in this fashion, and then as you get a little bit better at that and a little bit stronger and you feel like you can synchronize that motion, you're then going to add a little bit of body pivot at the same time. So that's going to look like this: shaft back to P6 with the club slightly in. As I turn, I'm going to turn my lead hand and arm into the bag with the club face square, and I'm going to turn my chest and hips towards the target. Already after holding that club with one hand for a couple of minutes there and speaking to you, my forearms beginning to get a bit fatigued, and my wrist feels quite fatigued as well. So don't be surprised if you find that quite difficult to do to begin with. Once you've done some lead arm stuff, you can do some trail arm. Again, this is a little bit of an extension from last week's video. So once again, the butt of the club is going to be a little bit further away this time, because when I had it in my lead hand, it's easier to get it sort of more over the golf ball. Once it's in my right hand, we're going to have the club a little further back, but it's also going to have this little bit of bend in our right arm like we talked about last week with the drill. The bend in the right wrist is going to be present. That's going to help to keep the shaft on this grid line. And then from there, I'm going to do the same thing with the uncocking of the wrist and the pronation of the trail arm. We're going to start to hit the bag. And again, as I do that, I'm using the arm and I'm using a little bit of body pivot to line this all up and make sure the club face as I do that is square. Training the lead arm and the trail arm separately is very beneficial, mainly from a strength development point of view. Again, my arms are already feeling that. If you just did it with two hands, it's not quite so strenuous there from a training point of view, but it also helps you to learn the right kind of form and really pushes you to learn how to maintain good hold of the club and move it in a particular way. Once you grab it with two hands, if you haven't trained that movement like I just described with individual arms, you're probably going to find that your tendency to revert back to your old pattern of a two-handed delivery is much, much stronger. So I'd strongly advise that you do lots and lots of reps one hand only, both lead arm and trail arm. Develop the sense of moving the club into the bag with both the hands and seeing how they would work independently to do that, so that when you put both hands back on the club, moving from this P6 position, right arm in front of, right elbow in front of the rib cage, right wrist bent back, club angled in slightly on the grid line, you're going to find that the final piece of this pivot, which is body release and arm and hand release, is going to be much easier for you to do. And that's going to give you that sensation of really turning into the ball with some load on the shaft and an ability to compress the golf ball. Just a quick one on the reason we put the shaft in somewhat. That's because at this speed and starting from a static position, we want the shaft to be a little bit more in at P6, and then as you're adding speed into the full swing and the rotations start to increase, that's going to help to then line the shaft up in real time at P6. But for the purpose of this drill, it's important you start with the shaft actually angled somewhat 20 degrees or so under plane or inside the hands at 6. Then from that static position, with the turn and the release of the wrists, we're gonna really get that right sensation. And then, as I say, as we start to swing faster with the added rotations, it's gonna help us to line up the shaft where we want it on the downswing. Just a little extension here for those of you who find it hard to get a bag heavy enough. I know I certainly do. The bag just keeps moving and moving, and one of the best ways to do this drill is to do this multiple times. And in order to do that time after time after time, you really need that bag to not move. So I've got it here up against the wall. You could maybe think of doing something similar. If you've got a heavy tire, that would work a lot better, but obviously not everyone can have access to that. So get your soft impact bag, try and make it as heavy as you can, but put it up against an obstacle like a wall and do this exercise where we go from P6 with the shaft in. I'm going to do this multiple times, one after another. It's really going to train the muscles in the forearm and the wrist to help strengthen them and teach them the correct mechanics in this final part of the delivery. Okay guys, there you have it. Thanks for watching. I hope you found the video useful. There's some really good information in there regarding adding power, adding club face control, synchronizing the body pivot with the arm and the club, and also just, training speed and strength. Strength first of all into the forearms, which is an area where a lot of golfers who hit the ball far are already very strong, and those who struggle with distance are quite weak. So even if you never hit a ball with that sort of exercise and transferred it to the ball, just hitting the bag in the way I mentioned will really help to train you up, get you stronger, and add some speed and distance to your shots. Thanks as always for watching. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day and your week to spend it with me. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already joined the channel, please click that subscribe button. Welcome to all the new subscribers. There's been a lot of you in the last month or so. It's great to have you on board and enjoying making the content. I hope you keep enjoying the videos themselves. Any messages or comments on this video, please do go ahead and post them down below, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Until next week guys, have a good one, stay safe, and I'll see you again very soon.